And now for our next news special report.
Tonight, our hearts go out to our friends, the Israeli citizens suffering insurmountable losses at the hands of merciless terrorists. But a surprising narrative emerges from the White House, one that awkwardly intertwines personal grief with the nation's heartache. President Joe Biden seems to repeatedly channel his own pain stemming from the tragic loss of his son Beau as a lens to view other tragedies like the horrific slaughter in Israel. Does his personal grief overshadow the sheer magnitude of other suffering? Tonight we'll dissect how a leader's personal loss becomes a recurring theme amidst global atrocities and why this approach has numerous Americans shaking their heads in disbelief and frustration. And you don't want to miss our final thought as we dive deeper into why this matters and what happens when leadership does more harm than healing. So, ladies and gentlemen, empathizing with loss, understanding the plight of those in anguish is a cornerstone of compassionate leadership. The question, though, is when does empathy tip into misplaced analogy? And does President Biden navigate these waters adeptly? The recent horrific events, which led to hundreds of Israelis, including women and children, being ruthlessly murdered by Hamas, beg this examination. Now, more than 1,000 Israelis have been slain, 22 of them Americans. An entire nation looks on as loved ones are ripped away from them in the most savage manner conceivable, creating an immeasurable void that no empathetic words could ever fill. This catastrophic loss that the Israelis are experiencing isn't merely statistics. These are families shattered, children orphaned, and generations traumatized by the sheer brutality witnessed. Yet amidst this tragedy, there's a troubling trend stemming from our leader of our great republic. The compulsion to link personal grief, as profound as it may be, with the large-scale, vile annihilation of innocence. In a press conference, instead of focusing wholeheartedly on the tragic events unfolding overseas and unequivocally condemning the appalling atrocities against Jewish individuals, President Biden sidetracked, invoking his personal loss into the dialogue. He articulated that Americans are paying for all those families that have been ripped apart, but then segued into a familiar terrain, his own bereavement, saying that a lot of us know how it feels. Watch.
Today, Americans across the country are praying for all those families that have been ripped apart. A lot of us know how it feels. It leaves a black hole in your chest when you lose family. Feeling like you're being sucked in. The anger, the pain, the sense of hopelessness. This is what they mean by a human tragedy, an atrocity on an appalling scale.
Now, this is not to downplay the sadness surrounding Beau Biden's untimely death to brain cancer, surrounded by medical care and loved ones, but does this personal grief compare to the public, violent, and brutal murders witnessed by an entire nation? The disturbing images from the terrorist attacks showcase a different magnitude of loss and horror, one that the Bidens fortunately did not have to experience. In moments where unity, unequivocal support, and a firm stance against perpetrators of violence should be echoed, we instead hear a narrative interwoven with personal, albeit tragic, loss of President Biden's son Beau that happened 6 years ago in a safe, peaceful environment, starkly contrasting the heinous acts committed against Israelis. Now, folks, amid this dive into global and personal tragedy, a quick pivot to personal well-being. If the turmoil of the world disrupts your peace, particularly during the night, allow Sleep Miracle Plus to guide you into restful slumber. Dr. Bruce Fong and experts at Sierra Integrative Medical Center have curated a blend of chamomile extract, passion flower, valerian root, and melatonin engineered to work in harmony, enhancing your sleep quality. The patented liposome delivery ensures maximum absorption, enabling you to enjoy a rejuvenating sleep. Start your journey to superior sleep now at GetSleepMiracle.com and enjoy 50% off with auto ship, plus a buy one, get one free promotion. Wake up refreshed and ready to face the day with Sleep Miracle Plus. Now, continuing our focus on the current crisis in Israel, it's imperative to highlight that Biden's manner of interjecting personal loss into a public tragedy is not an isolated incident. Remember the wildfires in Maui, the horror of Kabul, the airport bombing during the chaotic withdrawal from Afghanistan, and more. Each instance was inexplicably tied to his own personal loss, often diminishing the immediate suffering of others and sometimes even resulting in awkward interactions with grieving families. Many of these narratives as not mere empathy, but as an inability to separate personal grief from the role of leadership. one that demands undivided attention towards those suffering. The American hostage families in Gaza are not receiving the needed assurance and action from the U.S. government since the attacks on Israel began. Their pleas for intervention and support seem to be overshadowed by a leader seemingly caught in his own cycle of grief. In a role that demands the bearing of a nation's pain, not just individual sorrow, is there a requirement for a clearer delineation between personal grief and public empathy? The anguish of families witnessing the cruel murder of their kin cannot be aptly paralleled with peaceful passing amidst loved ones. The frequent fallback to personal loss, especially in the face of others' horror, seems to echo an unsettling tone deafness, perhaps unintended, but resonant nonetheless. Many Americans and Israelis alike find it increasingly difficult to see the empathy in his words when they are so often intertwined with his personal narrative. In moments where the focus should be solely on those suffering, the victims of atrocities, it invariably meanders back to Bo. The pain and tragedy experienced by Israelis cannot be adequately acknowledged when it's persistently juxtaposed against a personal, unrelated loss. Our great republic, we must stand against terrorism. Our solidarity with our allies should not be diluted by an internal narrative of loss. The question persists: can a leader effectively lead, empathize, and act without being hindered by their personal tragedies? And so, the essence of leadership often lies in the delicate balance of personal empathy and unwavering strength during tumultuous times. The crisis abroad don't allow the luxury of dwelling in personal sorrows for those in leadership. It demands an unbending, undistracted resolve. Biden's frequent reflections on his son, while deeply human and relatable on an individual level, may indeed be perceived as diminishing the immediate intense suffering of others, particularly in the context of abhorrent violence being meted out to the Israeli people. Leadership, especially in a republic as grand as ours, demands the compartmentalization of personal grief to ensure that the traumas and crises faced by its citizens and allies are addressed with undivided attention and unequivocal empathy. It's about allowing their stories, their pain, and their tragedies to stand undiminished in the stark light of day without being inadvertently overshadowed by the personal grief of their leaders. The American people, Israelis, and indeed citizens worldwide deserve such unswerving, undiluted focus amidst their plights. May their stories be heard, undiminished and clear, in every hall of power. Congratulations, you made it to the end of the video. Now keep up your quest for truth with this next news report. And if you found our channel enlightening, join the millions who agree with you. Tap subscribe. Thank you for watching the Next News Network.